In this episode of Home Theater Geeks, I talk about the acoustic treatments in my home theater with Anthony Grimani. So stick around.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek. In this episode, I continue my conversation with Anthony Grimani, this time about the acoustic treatments in my home theater. Now, Anthony is an electrical engineer. He specializes in audio electronics, acoustics, and speaker design. And he's also a home theater designer and the head of several companies, including Grimani Systems, which makes speakers, PMI Limited, which is a design consultation firm that does everything in room design for home theaters and commercial spaces like restaurants and professional studios and integrated media and living spaces. And he also heads MSR Acoustics, which is a resource for acoustical materials, which is what we're going to talk about today. And they market, among other things, the Sonatus line of cost-effective home theater acoustical treatments. Hey, Anthony, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Scott. It's good to be back with you.
Yes. In our last episode, we talked at length about the speakers that were installed in my home theater, which you provided, and I'm very grateful for that because they sound amazing. And we went into a lot of detail about how they were placed, the fact that my room is imperfect with one wall missing, and how to compromise intelligently for that. Now we're going to talk about acoustic treatments, which are, generally speaking, panels that you put up on the wall to affect the acoustical behavior of the room. So I want to start by asking you, what is your general philosophy of acoustic treatments, and how does that philosophy intersect with your thoughts about what's often called automatic room correction, like Odyssey and Dirac and stuff like that?
Right. So I always like to talk about either cars or cooking, because this is stuff we all know about and the analogies. I think in cooking, there's all these spices you can use. There's, of course, salt and pepper, and then there's cumin, and there's, the list goes on and on and on. And there is just the right amount of salt and the right amount of pepper and the right amount of paprika to put into a dish to where it all works. Put too much of it, and the dish is ruined. Same thing with acoustical treatments. There's just the right amount of either absorption, which is materials that suck the sound, actually convert it into heat through friction. There's the right amount of scattering, which is materials that the incoming sound waves get scattered back out into little pieces. And then the other category usually that people call bass traps, I just like to call them bass absorbers. There's the right amount of bass absorbers so that the bass decay time is controlled the right way and the standing waves are controlled the right way. So every room, just like every dish, requires the right amount of treatments. And the really interesting thing is a bunch of research was done a while back on what listener preferences are in terms of acoustical character of rooms. And it's been found most people tend to like a certain amount of reflection, a certain amount of absorption, a certain amount of scattering on listening to music, listening to films, listening to dialogue. And there's a pretty good statistical center to that. So with that in mind, you can take a room of a certain size and you can go, hey, given that size, in order to make most people enjoy the sound, I need to have so much reflection, so much absorption, and just run the calculations and go, look, this is what you need.
Now, a lot of people will just buy an AV receiver or something that has a room correction in it, like Odyssey or Dirac, and just run that. Why is that a good idea?
It is a good idea up to a certain point, and there's several points. The point number one is that if the room has severe acoustical anomalies, like too long of a reflection decay time at some frequencies and too short at other frequencies, there's no way for the receiver to know that. What it's going to do is try to adjust everything to where there's an equal amount of sound, regardless of whether the room is reverberant at some frequencies or not other frequencies. So it's going to compensate for that, and you're going to end up with an error. And it's an error because the microphone, I actually found my microphone here. The microphone is mightier than the sword. No, the microphone, microphone listens linearly. Mm-hmm. The human ear brain, and probably most animals' ear brain, does not listen linearly. It has the ability to separate the direct sound from the speakers, from the reflected sounds in the room, and it does so, and it adds it all up in a really complicated way that I'm not going to get into over here, but there's a field of study called psychoacoustics where they worry about that. And the people who practice that professionally are psychoacousticians.
Yes.
I'd love to be able to say I'm a psychoacoustician. So this guy walks into a bar, sits down, and tells somebody they're a psychoacoustician. Everybody leaves. So the issue is if you have a room that has really bad acoustical character, which means either too much reflection decay time, just too many reflections, or unbalanced reflections over time, then those auto EQ systems are going to yield a flawed result. And I have found that myself doing either auto EQ or manual EQ using microphones like we talked about in the last session, where you adjust everything, you draw a nice even target curve on your computer following all of the rules using good analysis and good microphones, and you listen, you go, that doesn't sound right. And you go, well, what's going on? Well, if you happen to be using Room EQ Wizard, which is one of my favorite programs, you can actually look using certain types of measurements. You can look at the reflection decay time. You can actually look at what they call RT60, but there's a whole bunch of different ways to look at it. And you can see that things are not smooth at all frequencies. And you go, aha, over here I have much longer of a decay time, and over here I don't. So really my target curve should follow that, and then you can adjust your target curve that way. The auto EQ systems don't do that. Also, beyond that, if you have uneven acoustical character, or if you have speakers with an uneven dispersion, also known as sound power with frequency, it's going to be very hard for the auto EQ system to work their way around that. Mm-hmm. So if you want a chance that auto EQ works well, you want to first pick a speaker system that has even radiation patterns. So even off-axis response with frequency, also known as sound power. That's the term of technical expression. And power over time is energy. That tells you what the energy bubble in the room is going to be. So you start with a speaker like that. And then next you make sure that the acoustical character of your room has an even decay of sound for all the frequencies that you're playing, pretty much even. A low frequency, it's okay for it to go rising up a little bit, and at a high frequency to fall off a little bit, but relatively even. If you have both of those things, chances are your auto EQ is going to work well. So you really do want to do that.
But
now, if not. So I was going to say that if you've taken the effort to choose speakers with an even off-axis response, so where the sound going directly to you has a certain character and the sound going off 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees is even, you've probably sprung for a pretty expensive speaker because it costs more money to make a speaker that way. The topologies of the speaker usually have to go to three-way. The drivers have to be really good with really wide dispersion. The crossovers need to be good. It's a bunch of stuff the manufacturer has to do to make speakers that have a really even dispersion with frequency. If you've treated the room with the right acoustical materials, or you've measured it and you spent the time to get it right, at that point, you probably deserve to do the equalization manually because you've already done a lot of work and spent a lot of money to get here. Why would you go, to 90% of the way and then hit a button and tell the robot to finish it? Take take that ball all the way to touchdown, put it down.
And what you would do to take it the rest of the way to the touchdown is to adjust the acoustics of the room with treatments.
Well, let's assume in this scenario that you've chosen speakers that have a good off-axis response, which, by the way, it's a little hard to know if they have or not. If the manufacturer shows you their chart, and there's a few out there, including ours, that shows you the sound power and the off-axis response in the polar plots, the ones that care about it are going to show it off. You choose that. And then you actually choose an acoustical treatment package that was either designed for you or that you experimented until it gave you a smooth decay with frequency.
I see what you mean.
At that point, it's sort of funny because while at that point you could more effectively rely on an auto EQ because it's going to work better.
Right.
I would contend that if you've done all that work, just do a manual EQ. It doesn't take that much work to do that. And how do you do that? Well, the interesting thing is that with look who showed up.
Look, it's Alessandro.
It's my director of engineering, our chief speaker designer.
Hey, Alessandro, how you doing?
It's Scott. Hey, Alessandro, we're doing a whole live thing. We have hundreds of people watching us. So I'm gonna ask you to go play with I don't know, your car's an iPhone something, and I'm going to continue this. Okay. All right. You can stay there if it's not bothering everybody, but shh. So that's my wide dispersion tweeter right there. The point I was trying to go, this is only mildly distracting.
Right.
The point I was trying to say is at that point, you've obviously put a lot of effort into this. Why don't you just give yourself the right to do a manual EQ? Like where you're actually controlling the end of the cuisine.
Mm-hmm. The final seasoning, if you will.
The final seasoning. So how do you do that? Well, first thing is you go out and spend $80 or $100 on a good USB driven or USB interface test mic, which you can buy from several people. You know, the two common ones are either the UMic one or the Dayton Audio. I'm forgetting the model number, but Dayton Audio makes one that's a USB interface. Oh my God, I can't believe.
Right.
And then you plug that in your laptop. You download Room EQ Wizard. You give them a little bit of money as a donation for doing a great product. You learn how to use it. There's tutorials online. And then you feed signals into your system, either using either a test disk, and there's a bunch of different ones out there that work well, or using an HDMI feed directly from your computer over into the system. And then you adjust. Now, how do you adjust?
There's the rub. So
you either have a really sophisticated system where you have separates, where there's a decoder, there's an equalizer, there's an amplifier, or you have a system with a decoder that has built-in manual EQ and an amplifier, or you have a system that has a decoder and a digital amp that has adjustments. But wait. With a number of the programs out there, there is actually utilities that allow you to go in manually and adjust bands manually. So Odyssey has a computer app, an iOS app that allows you to go in and manually adjust the bands, not just let it do its thing on its own going
automatically.
Yeah. With Dirac, you can actually do a Dirac EQ and you go, okay, well, it's doing this, it's doing that, but I really want a little more 2 kilohertz. You can change the target curve. You go and edit the target curve in Dirac. You go, look, I want a little more of this. Go ahead and recompute the EQ. You don't have to remeasure it. It just does the thing. And then it gets you the result. But you need to be measuring and listening. And you got to hope that your acoustic treatment package is good and your speakers are good. If all of that works out, you're going to end up with really good quality sound.
Which I have to say, I did, thanks to you.
You did.
So what treatments did you end up specifying in my room and why? And we have some graphics to show the plan.
Not a huge amount.
Not a huge amount.
Let's see. Your room starts off with a fair amount of acoustical absorption. The whole left wall, when you draw the curtain, is a giant absorber. On the right wall, you have a curtain or a drape that's also an absorber. You have a drape on the back. So you start off with a fair amount of mid-frequency absorption. We don't need to add a whole lot more.
Right.
And we can calculate that and we can measure it. And the measurements I did when I came to visit before the acoustic treatments were up confirmed the calculations.
Mm-hmm.
So now what's missing? Well, what's missing is a bit of mid-bass and low-frequency absorption, because those drapes and all those things only absorb the mid-frequencies, and we need to absorb lower frequencies that have bigger wavelengths. So we added, on the front wall, we added these things called decosorbers and decotraps, which are things that absorb low frequencies. They're thick chunks of actually polyester foam that have a wood panel that's perforated on the front that acts a little bit as a flexural absorber, and it absorbs well down into the 60 hertz region. So we added some low frequency absorption to balance out the decay time of the room.
Right. And so we had put 4 on the front wall.
Right.
2 in the upper corners and 2 in the lower corners.
Right. So the other thing is your room had, by the time we're all done with the first session, your room had absorption, some reflection, and then no scattering. There's all the sound either reflected back to you or was absorbed. And I usually like some amount of scattering in a room, some amount of energy that's floating around, like a nice gentle mist of sound. And so we added some diffusers on the sidewall.
If we go to the next picture, we can see the plan. Well, this is the sidewall.
This is the sidewall. So on
another
the right wall,
another decosorber down below there.
So one thing we did in shown in maroon here, dark red, is an absorber. Even though the room was already pretty well absorbed, we added one more absorber on that right wall to get rid of that first reflection that was pretty close to the speaker. You don't always need to get rid of first reflections. That's a fallacy.
And that's a lot of people talk about that on AVS4. The first thing I did was to put an absorber at the first reflection point.
Yeah. And it's a good idea to do it if the speaker's pretty close to that wall where the first reflection point is, but not always necessary. In the case of your room, we listened to it. We listened to it 2 ways. First, we played pink noise on the right speaker, and you move your head back and forth. If you hear a changing comb filter, something that's sort of phasing back and forth, going, that means you're hearing the speaker and the reflection beating against each other. Got to treat it. That's a really simple test. Don't need a mirror. Don't need to get, just listen to the effect of the reflection on pink noise coming out of the nearest speaker. So we did that. And then we also listened to 2-channel stereo going, hey, let's listen to the sound image of the left and right speakers. Let me add the panel. In this case, it was the right wall. And I hope I'm doing this the right way. This would be the right wall for you guys.
Correct.
Do you hear a difference between the panel on and off? Is the imaging better? Yes or no? And we decided, that was worth having an absorber there. Now, we didn't have an absorber that day, so
we used a yoga mat.
Same thing, big chunk of foam.
Big chunk of foam. It was good enough for the test.
So originally, I was suggesting to put 2 diffuser panels that are 2 foot by 2 foot on that right wall. But then you decided to put a bookcase there.
Media cabinets
cabinet.
I still like physical media. I have CDs, I have super audio CDs, I have DVD audios, and I have Blu-rays and Ultra HD Blu-rays, and I wanted someplace to put them.
I was waiting for you to say Laserdisc.
I do have a few of those. I don't have anything to play them on.
I have a spare Laserdisc player I can get you if you want.
Oh, okay.
I actually still have a bookcase, probably 2 or 3 tall of Laserdiscs that have not been played in decades at this point.
Yeah.
They're all probably rotten. So you added that media cabinet there, which actually by its shape tends to scatter sound out. It's not a very even scattering, but it's going to scatter it. So I recommended putting a single diffuser panel above the media cabinet, which is a 2x2 panel that's got a interesting broken shape that looks a little bit like the contours of a skyline. The sound waves that hit that would get scattered out in multiple directions and fill the soundstage of the room towards the back.
We're going to see the picture of that in a little while. Okay, then on the back wall, which is the next graphic, we can see the same thing, a diffuser, a scatterer.
Right.
In this is the blue square thing there. You had originally planned for a diffuser.
So I originally planned for two 2x2 diffusers. Media cabinet landed there. So we just went down to one diffuser up there so that the sounds that pass you, rather than reflect back or just get absorbed out, instead they're staying in the room, but they're diffusing out. Now, the effect of a diffuser on your perception of the size of the room is that it makes everything feel bigger. Why? Because instead of having these strong reflections that ping you very near, they're just small little reflections that your ear brain interpret as what happens in a bigger space. So it just increases the magnitude or the sense of magnitude of the sound field and tends to erase how close the walls are in the room. It's a good way to go.
And you'll notice this window here, that is covered by a fairly thick drape.
Right. So you have a big absorber in the middle of the back wall. Yeah.
Right. And then the final picture of this series is the overhead view.
Right. So originally I was thinking, before we did the measurements in the room, I was thinking you would get 4 absorber panels on the ceiling. And then I was like, okay, all of your drapes are adding a lot of absorption. We don't want that much more absorption. So I recommended to put the 2 green panels that are towards the top of this image between the speakers and between the front speakers, between the front wall and the top channel speakers to get rid of energy that's in the front of the room bouncing off the ceiling. And then I suggested putting 3 diffusers over your seating position, but essentially between the top speakers and back speakers to again give you a bigger magnitude and better immersion character to the speakers that are trying to fill in this 3-dimensional sound field.
So after making an initial attempt or an initial prescription, if you will, and then doing some measurements and seeing, oh yeah, we can do something a little different. That's what happened. I assume that this kind of reiteration process is kind of normal, right?
It is. Yeah. It happens a lot.
Yeah. You figure something out and then you go in and you measure and you go, oh, it should be something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the final room. Got a few photos for you. Here's the front wall, and I even have some artwork up a little bit. So you can see the front speakers. You go ahead.
The big panel that's in the middle of that, is that a TV?
That's a TV. It's a 77-inch Sony A95L. Beautiful picture. What a great picture. Here's a view from the side there, and you can see, I was interested, you can see the decosorbers on the front wall, upper corners and lower corners. You can see the absorber on the side wall and that's a 5th decosorber there under it. What I found interesting were these absorbers on the ceiling, which you specified as being floating. So they're actually tied to hooks in the ceiling, and they're actually away from the ceiling a ways.
Right.
What was the reason for that?
So the absorbers that are on the ceiling are 2 inches thick, which absorbs down to 500 hertz. I'd like you to absorb down to a little bit lower. By putting an air gap behind it, you get an effectiveness down to, in the case of what you got there, probably about 150 or 200 hertz. And that's really useful, is to get a broadband absorption character. Now, it also looks like you put some lighting behind there, right?
Well, actually, those are the can lights that were there to begin with, and they look like they're behind those, but they're actually a little bit in front of them. Yeah.
That looks cool from here, though.
Yeah, it does. I agree. Yeah. I agree. Okay, looking at the next picture, here we can see the scatterers, diffusers, right?
Yeah.
2, one above one of the media cabinets, one above the other, and 3 on the ceiling.
Right.
And you can see their shape. They really, whatever sound wave hits them gets reflected in 3 or 4 different directions.
Right.
And so there's a look from the corner, the front corner of the room. You can see the floating clouds. You call these the absorbers?
Yeah, the term that's often used is clouds. Yeah.
and then the absorbers. And you can see some artwork on the wall, but you also see the big drapes, which act as pretty good absorbers. And also you can see in this picture, we actually, in addition to the 2 main theater seats, we got 3 bar stools that are actually quite comfortable to sit in. So next time you and Ingrid and Alessandro come to visit, we'll have a movie night and we'll have seating for everybody.
Excellent.
So, and I will tell you, now that I've had a chance to be in the room and listen to some stuff, it's just gorgeous. It really sounds fantastic.
So did you notice, this is, we didn't talk about this, guys. We didn't rehearse any of this. This is live.
No.
Scott, you heard the room after I got done with an initial calibration and kind of the raw acoustics that sounded already very good. Mm-hmm. And then you went the extra step of adding not that much money in acoustic, a few $100s, whatever. And what did you notice? Was it worth it? Was it not worth it?
Well, I think it was worth it. I will tell you this. I didn't spend a lot of time critically listening before the acoustic treatments went up. I wish I had.
Yeah.
So that I could have said a definitive difference, but I didn't.
Okay.
I wanted to get the treatments up as soon as possible. And I have to give a shout out to Barry Willis, who is in fact in your office right now doing some work for you, who installed all those acoustic treatments.
Right.
And I think he did a great job on that. And once he did, and I started listening more critically, the room just sounds phenomenal.
Good.
Phenomenal.
Great.
My god nephew, if you will, the grandson of some very close friends of mine who live in town, was over with his parents and grandparents, and we watched the first Harry Potter film. And boy, the surround sound, the immersive sound field was phenomenal. Really just wonderful.
Yeah, those are nice
during the Quidditch game, where they're flying all around the room. It was really impactful, really, really good. I also watched Gravity, which, as you know, is one of the best Atmos mixes out there, and beautiful, just great.
It's I'm going to call it very active. Active being there's a sound in front of you, and then there's a sound behind there, and it moves here, which is unusual, right? Most film directors are really afraid of that. They want your attention focused on the screen, and only sounds in front, and everything else is very subdued because they're paranoid about the sound taking your attention off the screen.
Right, but in this case,
it's just like, nope, you're in space. She's here. He's there. The sounds follow exactly where you imagine the different actors would be or protagonists would be, and it works very, very well.
It does. And in this room, it worked really, really well. Like we were talking about on the last episode, I was amazed at how the side and rear sounds actually were not coming from the ceiling.
Right.
They were coming from a little above ear height, maybe a little higher than where they would have had the speakers actually been placed on the side walls, but the effect was still very hemispherical, shall we say.
Great. Yeah, the diffusers help that a lot, by the way, those scattering devices. Mm-hmm. I should be careful about the term of art also. What do
you mean?
There's a semantic in acoustics of what's a diffuser, what's a scattering device. And
technically they're different?
It's just it's a semantic thing. These devices are all scattering devices. Their role is to have an incoming vector of sound wave that gets scattered out. The term diffuser usually has become synonymous with a device in which the scattering process is through diffraction, and they usually look like these things that have slots this way and or this way. And the sound waves go in there, they rotate, and then they at their resonance frequency, they bounce out and diffract. And as they diffract, they change their phase, and it creates an effect of scattering. And it's it's a semantic thing. So strictly speaking, a diffuser is a thing that looks like these graded devices, which these devices you have are not.
Right.
These are much more straightforward scattering or re-reflecting devices. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. In my finding, in a small room, and I don't mean to insult your room, it's not a very big space.
It isn't. It's no insult whatsoever.
In a space like that where you have the panels not very far from you, I am finding, this is a matter of experience with this stuff, I'm finding that aggressive diffraction-based diffusers end up coloring the sound a little bit. They have this sort of little zippering character. If you have enough space in a bigger space, like a big recording studio or a performance hall, they work great. But in more kind of, I would say, near field from the device, they end up coloring the sound. And I generally prefer devices that are more of just a regular redirecting sound that's scattering it around, which is what you got.
Right. I was going to say, I've seen these diffraction-based scattering devices in recording studios a lot.
Right.
But they're quite a bit larger rooms.
Right. Exactly.
So, well, this has been quite the adventure putting this room together, and I sure appreciate your help. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, it was really fun working with you on this project. What I like about projects like this is that they tax creativity, in a positive way.
Yes.
It's not, what we do a lot of is these dedicated screening rooms. So a rectangular space, the ratio from the front to the side to the top is all predicted. The panels are about the same. Speakers, everything is basically follow the recipe. The challenges there are always interior design, construction schedules, and things like that. But really, the electroacoustic creativity is, I almost want to joke. It's like building another Formula One race car. It's whatever. It's this year's model.
I've done it again.
Oh my God! But working in your room was like taking a convertible Ferrari and driving it down through a motocross track and making it work.
I like the analogy. I like that a lot.
And just trying all of the different tricks to make what ultimately is a convertible media lounge environment. When you're not watching a movie in there, it's your living space. It's your living room. Yeah. And taking that and being able to make it be a living room and then close the curtain and now it's a screening room and then open the curtain, it converts back, makes the creative juices really flow. And I'm really happy that you gave us the trust and space to mess around with this. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. The bottom line is it can be done. You can, given enough energy and figuring it out and iterations, you can make a mixed use space like this work really well.
Yes, exactly. And that's really the goal that I had in mind, other than having a nice room for myself, is to be able to show people that you don't need a perfectly proportioned and isolated room to do something good.
Right.
That you can do something good if you have a less than ideal circumstance.
Right.
If you know what you're doing or you hire someone who knows what they're doing.
Right.
So I want to thank you so much for doing that, for being with me on this journey and making it come out so good, and for being on the podcast to explain it to everybody.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So tell us again where everybody can find out about all the stuff you do.
But all y'all.
Y'all?
The acoustic treatments we used in your room largely came from our Sonatus brand, which you will find by going to www.sonitususa.com, and that's SONITUS USA, all one word, .com. The engineering thinking and consulting comes from our engineering group, which is PMI Engineering, which you'll find online at www.pmiltd.com, stands for Performance Media Industries Limited. And the speakers that we used in your room, which we didn't talk about much here, but in the previous episode, are all made by Grimani Systems. It's my last name. You can find that under www.grimani.tv, GRIMANI.tv. You'll have the whole list of all the different things we make and some examples of installations, et cetera, in there.
And there are some beautiful installations in there. I will tell you that for sure.
Thank you.
So anyway, thank you so much again for being here on the show and helping us understand what happened and getting me my relatively close to dream home theater.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Anthony. That's Anthony Grimani here, and we appreciate his work very much. And anybody who has heard his speakers knows what I'm talking about. They are phenomenal. So thanks a lot for watching. If you have a question for me, just send it along to htg@twit.tv. And I'll answer. I may ask some questions, but I'll also answer as many as I can right here on the show. And want to let you know also that all of the TWiT shows are now available on YouTube to watch for free, but with ads. If you want to go ad-free, all you have to do is join the club. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit and join up for ad-free shows and access to the Discord channel and all kinds of cool stuff. So until next time, geek out.
Hey, buddy, are you a geek? Are you a tech enthusiast? Then I would love to invite you to join a tech community like no other. You can gain exclusive access to our incomparable quality tech content for just $7 a month with Club TWiT. As a member, you'll enjoy all TWiT TV shows ad-free, plus access private video feeds for insider shows like iOS Today, Home Theater Geeks, and so much more. Dive into the members-only TWiT Plus bonus feed for behind-the-scenes content, club discussions, and special events. But here's the best perk. Join our incredible Discord community to watch live show productions, chat with hosts, and participate in exclusive members-only activities. It's your backstage pass to the world of TWiT. Whether you're a tech enthusiast or a lifelong learner, Club TWiT elevates your knowledge while entertaining your interests. Get 2 weeks free when you sign up now for $7 a month and unlock unparalleled access at twit.tv/clubtwit. That's twit.tv/clubtwit. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you and welcome to the club.